Hey, folks, Erick Stakelbeck. Welcome to a Friday Watchman Newscast live stream. The work week is over, but in the Middle East, it seems that things are just beginning. We've got a very busy news day out of the world's most chaotic and volatile region, from Lebanon to Syria to Yemen to Iraq to, of course, Gaza and beyond. A lot happening. And hey, what happens in the Middle East does not stay in the Middle East. And if you're sitting here in the West, like I am, I'm sitting in the United States right now, and you think you're immune, you've got another thing coming. Today, U.S. forces, U.S. bases, a U.S. embassy attacked by Iranian proxies. Yet again, some 82, count them, folks, 82 attacks launched by Iranian proxies, Iranian-backed militias and terror groups in Iraq and Syria against U.S. personnel there since October 17th alone. 82 attacks. We're going to dig into that a bit. But let's start today with the state of play in Gaza right now. We reported yesterday here on the newscast. And by the way, if you miss any of our live streams, just go to the homepage and right under newscast. You will find them all right there. While you're there, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. Things are happening so fast, it's sometimes tough to keep up, but we want to be your one-stop shop for all things Middle East and beyond, by the way. When there's not a war raging in the Middle East, we also talk China, Russia. We're talking Great Reset, the rise of artificial intelligence, and some other hot-button issues that I think you'll be interested in, all from a biblical perspective. Yes, unapologetically, proudly, this is news from a Christian, from a biblical perspective. So let's dig into it. That state of play with Hamas right now. I mentioned that we reported yesterday hundreds now reportedly of Hamas, at least hundreds of Hamas operatives, Hamas terrorists have now surrendered to the Israel Defense Forces. Now, we saw the footage yesterday out of southern Gaza with dozens and dozens of Hamas jihadists surrendering, and that seems to be becoming a trend in Gaza right now, according to reports out of the region. And folks, if we see a mass surrender of Hamas terrorists, obviously that would shorten the war. You have to think that any Hamas jihadi right now who's seeing these images of his fellow jihadis surrendering, it's got to hurt morale. And if morale is low, they will be more prone to surrender. So that's the hope going forward. A lot of lives will be spared if these Hamas terrorists just lay down their arms. Now, as I noted yesterday on the newscast, the MO many times for Islamic terrorists is to go out in what they see as a blaze of glory and martyr, in their words, martyr themselves as suicide bombers. So we shall see. Hey, it's not the first time. ISIS jihadists also surrendered in Iraq a few years ago, and now we see Hamas terrorists surrendering as well. So we shall see where that's going. But the bottom line here, folks, is this, or I should say the big question: why do you think they are surrendering? I'll answer it for you. Because Israel, as we have been documenting here since this campaign began by the Israel Defense Forces, responding, key point there, Israel didn't start this, Israel didn't ask for this. Israel is responding to the most vicious, bloody, deadly terror attack since the Holocaust for the Jewish people, and one of the worst terror attacks in modern history. So this is a response by Israel. But since the beginning of this response, this campaign, Israel has made incredible strides. They've already pacified northern Gaza. Pacified is a stretch. Let me rephrase that. They've mostly gotten Gaza under their control. Hamas has lost its grip on northern Gaza, including Gaza City. And there are still pockets of Hamas resistance there in the northern half of the Strip, but Israel is working overtime to just stamp out those pockets of resistance as well. In the meantime, a real stranglehold around Khan Yunis and the south. The IDF, once this truce, this mini ceasefire was up, I shouldn't say it was up. It really wasn't up. Israel was prepared to extend it by a few more days. The truce was destroyed by Hamas, who launched a terror attack in Jerusalem last Thursday, and then rockets last Friday into southern and central Israel. So truce off, needless to say. And that's a good thing at the end of the day, because Israel picked up right where it left off. Any loss of momentum that I have to say, I personally was concerned about Israel perhaps losing some momentum with a week-long break in fighting, but it was anything but the case. Look, Israel has really, I think, shocked Hamas with the lightning speed of its offensive in Khan Yunis to the very heart of Khan Yunis, which you're hearing reports coming out from the IDF right now where they're saying, look, in Gaza City, obviously terror hotbed and then some, but at least some of the houses didn't have weapons or terror infrastructure, some of the civilian homes. According to Israeli soldiers on the ground, Khan Yunis, from house to house, as they go from house to house, fight and raid houses. I mean, literally every house, according to the IDF, is essentially a weapons depot. Every single home they are entering is just filled with weapons of various sorts for Hamas. So Khan Yunis may be Israel's toughest challenge yet in this campaign, but here's the good news. Israel, again, tremendous momentum, lightning speed, great advances. We now have Hamas terrorists surrendering. We have several pretty significant Hamas commanders eliminated, killed by the IDF. Several of those who were behind the October 7th terror massacre also killed. And when these Hamas terrorists surrender, they're giving information. The IDF is interrogating them, getting invaluable intelligence on perhaps where the remaining hostages are. Folks, at least 130 still held in Hamas captivity. And according to the IDF, very likely in and around that Khan Yunis area. So what you're seeing unfold right now is pivotal, this campaign in the south, not only for potentially freeing the hostages, but also for potentially cutting off the head of the Hamas snake in Gaza. That would be Yahya Sinwar. Now, he is the leader of Hamas in Gaza. He was the mastermind behind October 7th. He is reportedly hiding somewhere like the rat he is in the tunnels beneath Khan Yunis. And Israel is hunting him, and they're vowing that they will eliminate him. On to the very top, the prime minister has said as much. Now, when we talk about the head of the snake, usually we are referring to the Iranian regime, which is the ultimate head of the snake in the region and the ultimate fount of terror behind Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, the militias, the Houthis, and all the rest. But on the micro level, the head of the snake inside the Gaza Strip is certainly Yahya Sinwar, and perhaps this war is shortened if he is eliminated, and perhaps more Hamas terrorists surrender if they see their leader no more. So we shall see, but Israel is vowing to find him. They have said that they are close, and he's very, very likely in those tunnels beneath Khan Yunis or around that area. But the concern, I believe, is that the likes of Yahya Sinwar, the top Hamas leadership, could potentially escape and make their way out of Gaza. Now, it seems really the only way out for them would be through Egypt and through that Rafah border crossing. But this is all going to unfold, folks, in the days to come. And I think many in the world are shocked, and many, no surprise, are reluctant to admit the incredible advances Israel has made in this campaign. You heard the doomsayers before Israel went into Gaza back in October saying it's going to be a quagmire. Israel's going to be there for years. It's going to be bloody. It's going to be horrible. Israel is going to take just massive, massive losses. Well, I'll tell you, every loss is horrible. And Israel has lost over 80 soldiers. And in a nation as small as Israel, that is a highly significant and hurtful number, no doubt. But compared to what was predicted in some quarters in the mainstream media and elsewhere, Israel's doing pretty darn good, folks. I'll just put it for you in layman's terms. And they are making great headway in this battle to, as Benjamin Netanyahu said once again today, crush Hamas so that Hamas no longer exists in any form or fashion in which it can threaten the state of Israel in any way. Might there still be people who identify themselves as Hamas? Yes, there may be. It's an ideology at the end of the day. But Netanyahu is saying, look, there may be people who say, I'm Hamas, but they're going to be driven underground, any of them who do still exist, and they will no longer have the capacity to attack Israel. It's a big goal, but Israel right now is on its way. And it's, folks, look, it's not going to happen overnight. I'm saying to you, and I'm reporting to you, yes, Israel's making great advances. That doesn't mean that Hamas will be defeated tomorrow. It's going to take a while. Okay, it's going to take a good bit longer, but Israel is on its way. It's accomplishing. IDF commanders are saying, look, we are accomplishing our goals. This has been a highly effective campaign so far towards that ultimate goal stated by Israel's military and political leadership of destroying Hamas once and for all. So that's the state of play right now in Gaza, where Hamas is on the run. I think there's no other way to put it. You know Hamas is in trouble, folks, when Hamas leaders, get this, are now calling on the UN to step in and basically impose a ceasefire. Hamas launched this war, and now they are reaping what they've sown, and they don't like it. And they're saying, oh no, the Zionist entity really meant what it said. It really is going all in and crushing us. We may no longer exist on the individual level and as a group, as an organization. Now, the irony of ironies, Hamas is calling on the UN to impose a ceasefire. They're pleading for the UN to help them get out of the bind that they've created for themselves on October 7th. And really, they created this bind in 1987 with the Hamas Charter. This was an organization founded on the destruction of Israel. That was the stated goal. And things have flipped. Israel is here to stay. Israel will not only survive, but thrive. That's not me saying that from just my own kind of cheerleader, hey, Israel's going to survive and thrive. No, it's not me saying it. I'm just quoting the Bible, where we can go line by line, verse by verse, cover to cover about Israel's future and how Israel's not going anywhere. According to the prophet Amos, God Almighty speaking through him, the people of Israel have returned to their ancestral homeland, never to be uprooted again. What part of never do Hamas, Hezbollah, the Iranian regime not understand? Apparently a good chunk of it. Now, I want to talk about the U.S. and we talk about the international community, quote unquote, pressuring Israel. The Biden administration, sadly, is at the top of that list. So I want to talk about the U.S. and some major Iranian provocations against the United States today, Friday, December 8th, in Iraq and Syria. But before we get to that, we're talking Iran, we're talking head of the snake, we're talking about the ring of fire. Gaza, of course, Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, part of that ring of fire, along with Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Shia militias in Iraq and Syria, and of course, the Houthis in Yemen. Well, Hezbollah today, which is Iran's most lethal proxy, most dangerous, and we've been telling you every single day here in the newscast, watch that northern front. The second front in Lebanon, where the Great Northern War, as we've called it here on the Watchman, will eventually unfold. That's where you think Gaza is fierce fighting and the stakes are high. Man, you ain't seen nothing yet, because when things really break out between Israel and Hezbollah, there will be a reckoning for Hezbollah. And it's going to be intense, and that's an understatement. Hezbollah is several magnitudes more powerful than Hamas. Well, today, Hezbollah, one day after launching an anti-tank missile from southern Lebanon into northern Israel that killed one Israeli civilian, today, Hezbollah claimed responsibility for 8 attacks in northern Israel. Varieties of rockets, missiles, anti-tank missiles, etc., that Hezbollah continues to launch. 8 separate attacks Hezbollah claimed responsibility for just today. Now, Israel has responded with airstrikes. And folks, Hezbollah also, according to reports out of the region, and there's a great Twitter handle I want you to check out on X, used to be known as Twitter, called Israel Radar, R-A-D-A-R, and some great information there. But he reported yesterday, or she, or whoever's behind that site, not quite certain who it is, but they seem to have excellent contacts in Israel's intelligence and military communities. And Israel Radar reported yesterday that the Iranian regime and Hezbollah's leadership are none too happy with the performance of some of Hezbollah's elite units, in particular the Radwan unit, during this war. Hey, Hezbollah, by their standards, has taken some pretty heavy losses, at least 90, some say over 100 Hezbollah jihadists have been killed since hostilities broke out on October 7th. And Hezbollah chose, again, just as Hamas chose to attack Israel and launch this war on October 7th, Hezbollah unilaterally chose to open that second front, that Lebanon front. That was Hezbollah's choosing. Hezbollah began launching rockets and missiles. But now they may be feeling some pangs of regret as well, because they're taking losses, and reportedly, Hezbollah is a bit surprised at the intensity of Israel's strikes against them. They really thought, it appears, that things would be essentially the way they've been since 2006, the last Israel-Hezbollah war, the second Lebanon war, as it's been called. Hard to believe, over 17 years ago, that unfolded in the summer of 2006. But ever since then, it's been kind of this staring at each other across the border and no one really making a move, kind of a stare down along that Israel-Lebanon border. Hezbollah knew better. I shouldn't say they knew better. This isn't an organization with much wisdom. We'll just say that. But they knew not to press their luck. Let me rephrase that. Because they knew if they did that there's a very good chance that they'd be blown into oblivion. And that was only enhanced, that fear of Hezbollah, as the Lebanese economy started to crater. Remember, Hezbollah is a state within a state, the state of Lebanon. Lebanon's economy is in absolute tatters, thanks largely to Hezbollah and their presence. But they know that they will reap a very, very nasty, nasty response from Israel if they go all in. Hezbollah knows this. And Netanyahu has been saying this repeatedly, and Israeli military officials and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, they've been reiterating this on a daily basis, that look, if Hezbollah goes all in, what we've seen right now is just, it's low. I hate to call it low intensity. People are being killed, but it's not an all-out war on the northern border between Israel and Hezbollah. But if Hezbollah went all in, and I'm talking launching thousands of rockets, I'm talking sending shock troops over the border, then Israel's response will be absolutely overwhelming. That will be the end of Hezbollah. Hezbollah will sign its death warrant. And Netanyahu has said as much, as have Israeli military leaders. If you go all in Hezbollah, as Hamas did on October 7th, you'll suffer the same fate. And Lebanon, by extension, will suffer the same fate as Gaza. Beirut will look like Gaza City and Khan Yunis. So Hezbollah has been wary of going all in, and I believe the Iranian regime has been holding Hezbollah in reserve really for that day. What day is that? The day where Israel says, we can no longer countenance this, we must strike Iran's nuclear facilities and hold the head of the snake accountable. Because Iran right now, hey, they're laughing all the way to the bank. They provoked this on October 7th. Folks, October 7th doesn't happen without Iran. Without Iran's funding, arming, support, training. It's no coincidence that in the run-up to October 7th, we had 500 Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorists in Iran training. Training for what? It's no coincidence that Hezbollah fighters, Houthi fighters, have a pipeline in and out of Iran for training, and they get drones and drone parts and rockets and missiles from the Iranian regime. So a day is coming where Iran eventually will be held accountable, the mullahs in Tehran. And that nuclear program, it's not getting much mention right now as the war in Gaza is overshadowing it. But that is still 1A for Israel's military and security establishment in terms of threats and threats that need to be neutralized. It's an existential threat to the world's one and only Jewish state. So when that day comes, I don't think it's an if or when scenario. I think it's when, because the world, and certainly the current administration in Washington, D.C., doesn't have the stomach to take on Iran's nuclear program. Appeasement is the order of the day for them, but not for Israel. And when that day comes where Israel says, we're at 0 hour here, if we don't act now, Iran's going to cross the threshold and cross the point of no return and go nuclear. And guess what? They will use the bomb. When Israel does that, how will Iran react? Of course, there will be an Iranian response, but Iran's true trump card, in their view, is Hezbollah. That's their ultimate response. I've argued on previous newscasts that, look, will Israel, or I've posed the question, I should say, and by the way, we've got a very active chat, thousands of people around the world watching us live right now. What do you think? Leave your thoughts. We've got a highly educated audience. It's an honor and a privilege to come to you on a daily basis. I've said, look, is there a chance that Israel concurrently, as it strikes Iran's nuclear facilities, strikes Hezbollah as well, preemptively? You know the response is coming from Hezbollah, so why not just preemptively strike them before they have the chance? Think of the 6-day war, where Israel essentially won that war when the Egyptian Air Force was still on the ground. We may soon see that day of reckoning for Hezbollah, that great northern war, may not be far off. And Yoav Gallant, Israel's defense minister, said this week that the goal, before communities that were evacuated from the north can return, the goal is to push Hezbollah beyond the Litani River. Now, we're talking about Iran being the head of the snake and employing its various proxies around the region. The Houthi rebels in Yemen, and that's the third front in all of this. I reported yesterday that the U.S. is attempting to restrain Israel from responding to these constant attacks from the Houthis. None of them have been successful thus far, thank God, but the intent is certainly there. And Iran reportedly really is enjoying using the Houthis right now, and they've almost become the preferred proxy for Iran because, number one, it's more difficult. Look, Yemen, the Houthi power base, it's 1,000 miles south of Israel. Whereas, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Syria, Lebanon, they're on Israel's doorstep. Easier for Israel to strike back. And number two, Yemen is a lawless place. The Houthis don't really have to have any concern about living under a government. Like I said, Hezbollah is a state within a state, the Lebanese government. Yemen's the Wild West. So there's advantages for Iran. They believe it's tougher for Israel or even the United States to strike back against the Houthis in Yemen. So look for these Houthi attacks to continue, folks, until and unless there is a response on the part of Israel or the part of the United States. Now, the U.S. destroyers in the Red Sea have shot down these Houthi projectiles, but the U.S. is restraining Israel from responding, saying, look, we've got it. We'll take care of this. The problem with that is the U.S. has shown no inclination to use any force because they're petrified, and we hear report after report out of D.C., and the Biden administration, they are petrified of this becoming a broader war, of escalating, of pulling others in. Israel is not pulling others in, and the United States is not pulling others in, quote unquote. They are pulling themselves in. Hamas launched the war, number one, on October 7th. Hezbollah, unprovoked, began launching rockets and missiles shortly thereafter, as did the Houthis. And Iran, on its own volition, began launching attacks through its proxies in Iraq and Syria against U.S. forces. The war has already broadened and expanded. Newsflash, you're in a multi-front war with varying levels of intensity on the multiple fronts. Some more intense than others, but with great potential for more intensity on all fronts. This is the kind of weak posture by the West. I said last week that weak men create hard times. And you're seeing the bitter fruits of that right now. But this is kind of weak posture that'll get you in trouble in a place like the Middle East, where the strong horse is the order of the day. And the Iranian regime does not respect diplomacy, does not respect negotiation, does not respect appeasement, does not respect trying to come to a consensus and that kind of thing. No, they don't understand. That's not their language. You're speaking two different languages. They won't understand it. They won't respond to it. In fact, they'll see it as weakness. That's why all this talk right now, still of a premature ceasefire, including in D.C. and in the halls of the capitals of Europe, is so dangerous. Because look, folks, if Israel, and they're not going to do it, thank God, but if Israel were to agree to a ceasefire now and leave Hamas to fight another day, as I'm pulling up a piece I want to quote from directly for you about what's going on in the U.S., if that were to happen, it'd be an absolute disaster. Hamas would strike again. Iran, Hezbollah would be emboldened. But by extension, and they'd see Israel as weak and ripe for the pickings. But by extension, they would see the U.S. and Europe as weak as well. They would see the U.S. as, in particular, as complicit in pressuring Israel to agree to a premature ceasefire. The U.S. also would be, by extension, seen as weak and vulnerable if Israel agrees to a premature ceasefire. Now, I want to get into the U.S., speaking of which, and what went down today in Iraq and Syria. Before I do, quick mention, our good friends at ARTSA. You've heard me talk about them a bit as we're into the holiday season right now. Hanukkah, happy Hanukkah to everyone. Launched yesterday, and Christmas right around the corner. And at the same time, we have some 300,000 people in Israel right now displaced from their homes and living in hotels, living in shelters from the north and the south due to this war, because of Hamas, because of Hezbollah. The result of this, Israel's economy is seeing hard times. Tourism is one of the drivers of Israel's economy. It has come to a screeching halt because of the war. Israeli small businesses right now are struggling. ARTSA is a great one, and I want to see them thrive because I love this company. I love what they're about. The founder is a good friend of mine who is currently right now serving in the Israel Reserves, bravely defending his country. And the best thing about it is it's a great product, a great company, and you are fulfilling the biblical mandate laid out in Genesis 12:3 and elsewhere to bless the people of Israel. Right now, I can't think of a better way to bless Israel than to bless Israeli businesses, Israel's economy, so that the nation can continue to thrive. Look, wars cost money. When Israel has so many evil, demonic enemies coming at it, it's got to fight back. They have to be equipped through the soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces. So all of this goes into Israel's economy, and Israel's businesses are one of the driving engines behind that. That's why multiple reasons I support ARTSA. And by the way, did I mention it's a great product? ARTSAbox.com, ARTZA, ARTSAbox.com. Folks, I don't talk about a whole lot of organizations on the show. Mayor Panim's one we love, and ARTSA. There's a handful. And the reason I endorse and fully support them is because I know them. I know what they're all about. I've been with them. I've spent time with them. I see what they do. So that, through firsthand experience, is why I can support an organization like ARTSA. What a good-looking product. If you've never been to the Holy Land, or you want to go back, but you can't now, or it's on your bucket list, an ARTSA box will bring you the sights, the sounds, the smells of Israel, handcrafted, handmade in Israel, places like Galilee, Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Nazareth, the Negev, the Golan, etc. Awesome stuff, an authentic taste of the Holy Land, made by Israeli artisans and Israeli artists, small business people. Just a great cause all around, and just in time for Hanukkah and Christmas. Great gift for the Israel lover in your home. And what a surprise. Hey, it's straight from the Holy Land, and that's always special when that arrives at your doorstep. Talk about a unique gift as well that'll get people in your family talking. So check it out, artsabox.com, and there's a discount. Watchman 18. That's MAN, Watchman 18. You get an 18% Watchman discount for your Arts a Box subscription. Check them out. Great folks over there doing some good stuff. Some not so great folks doing some not so good stuff are Iran's proxies in Iraq and Syria. Now, today, I mentioned this at the top, the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad came under attack by mortar, by Iranian proxies in Iraq, mortar launches, multiple at the U.S. Embassy. Now, thankfully, no one was killed or injured, but the attacks didn't stop with the embassy in Baghdad. And by the way, that's a massive embassy compound in Baghdad that the U.S. has. But the attacks didn't stop here. Here are some more of the details for you. The commander, I'm just reading this straight off my phone, the commander of an Iran-backed Iraqi militia, Iran-backed, is vowing more attacks on U.S. interests in Iraq after the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad came under mortar fire today, December 8th. A multi-mortar attack was launched against a U.S. Embassy compound in Iraq, a U.S. official said. There were no injuries or infrastructure damage reported, thank God. But hours later, U.S. and coalition forces came under attack 3 more times, once in Syria and twice in Iraq, in a mix of rocket and drone attacks. Again, that hybrid model, right? Rockets and drones. That's what these proxies use. The commander of the Iraqi Kataib Saeed al-Shahada, or Shahada, I should say, Abu Allah al-Wali, did not claim responsibility for the attacks, but said later that he rejects talk about stopping or easing operations as long as Zionist crimes continue in Gaza and America occupies Iraq, in his words. So I'm not claiming responsibility, but we're going to attack you again if you keep it up. That's basically what he's saying. Figure that one out. In all seriousness, 82 attacks against U.S. interest in Iraq and Syria since October 17th, folks. And look, remember, there's some 900 U.S. Soldiers still in Syria, 25 to 3,000, I believe, 2,500 to 3,000, I believe, next door in Iraq. And they're, I don't want to say they're sitting ducks, but hey, since Joe Biden took office in January 2021, in under 3 years, we've seen well over at this point 100 attacks against U.S. interest in Iraq and Syria launched by these Iranian proxies. Folks, that's a lot. And the U.S. has barely responded. I believe I can count on one hand the amount of times the U.S. has actually responded. The Iranian regime and its proxies have made clear their goal is to push the United States out of the region once and for all. So what's the U.S. going to do about it? There have been airstrikes, multiple, along the Iraq-Syria border targeting some of these Iranian militias. Their weapons depots, things of that nature. But clearly, the Iranian regime is not getting the memo. It has not been enough to deter them. Folks, if we learned anything on October 7th, I'm sad to say, it's that deterrence doesn't work when you're dealing with genocidal jihadists. So the deterrent aim of the United States and the deterrent intention, it ain't working. And when something doesn't work, you need to move on to plan B. We haven't seen that yet from the current administration in D.C. vis-a-vis the Iranian regime. They've continued to go down the opposite road and basically bang their heads against the wall. And what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? That's what the U.S. is doing right now in the Middle East vis-a-vis the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime got the memo and understood very clearly when Qasem Soleimani was eliminated in January 2020, almost 4 years ago now. That was true deterrence. Actually, it wasn't even deterrence. That was the U.S. going on the offensive and sending a message. And it's far past time, I believe, that the U.S. does that again when it comes to the Iranian regime. And the message, for starters, could be as simple as this. telling Iran any negotiations are off the table with you over your nuclear program, any kind of negotiations we were engaging in. We're freezing any money we were going to release to you, and you're persona non grata until your behavior changes. Everyone watching right now knows the Iranian regime's not going to change its behavior, because then they wouldn't be the Iranian regime. But nonetheless, and you could throw in there, oh, by the way, we are going to just launch devastating sanctions that will cripple you. Folks, that can be done without firing a shot. Iran's regime could collapse without a shot being fired, potentially, if the U.S. and others would get their act together and unite against this menace. And the Iranian people, closing thought here, talk about the victims of Iranian regime terror. How about the Iranian people? Look, Persia, it's modern day Iran. It was Persia during Bible times. It's a Bible land with an incredible history. The people of Iran are the main victims of this wicked regime. And by the way, to encourage you as we close, the fastest growing church in the world right now is in Iran. You might be shocked, but more people are coming to Christ right now in Iran than anywhere else in the world. Talk about encouragement for your Friday afternoon as you head into the weekend. Against all odds, the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism is also home to the world's fastest growing church. And despite relentless persecution, Christianity continues to grow mostly underground in Iran. Big takeaway here: you can't stop the gospel. And I'll leave you with that. Thanks so much for joining us here today on The Watchman. Keep it all in prayer. Pray for the persecuted church in Iran. Pray for Israel. Pray for my country, the United States. Many things on the prayer list for the weekend. And the best thing about it is prayer works. God bless you. Until next time, remember, never hold your peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.